Hi, this is Miss Deegan with your Sunday lecture on Lord of the Flies, the creative analysis assignment there for our very first of 3 weeks in the unit, Maybe There Is a Beast. I titled it that because I love this moment in the book when you get to this moment where Simon says, maybe there is a beast. Everything is riding on that idea of identifying the evil on the island and acknowledging that there is evil. So, that will be the inspiration for a lot of the thematic questions that we're considering, especially this one. So this is the unit's culmination. You'll write a full timed essay, but it's not timed, it's untimed. For the yearly ones, we're just going to take our time. A full response to the FRQ from 2005. Write an essay where you discuss how a character in Lord of the Flies, in this case, struggles to free himself, in this case, from the power of others, or seeks to gain power over others. So as you're reading the book, you're already beginning to think about power and the way that it can be corrupted, and a character of particular interest to you. You can even choose at this early stage to follow one all the way through, or you can just let them come to you and you'll find throughout it which ones are most compelling to you. So we're thinking about power, and because of that, I did assign a poem for today as well, in addition to reading through chapter 4. The unit standards are here, but that's really more for me to organize myself. This is what we'll work on this week. In the creative analysis assignment, we're going to think about setting. How does the island setting already begin to communicate these ideas about power and evil, or the counteracting forces of those pieces? And then we'll use imagery to discover setting. You can see a little preview there of the organization assignment and the grammar assignment, which I'll explain in other videos. So we're starting with this quick poem, and in it, you're going to find all of the stuff to begin uncovering the unit's themes about power and about fear. Nikki Giovanni is a wonderful poet. I really love her work. It's free verse typically. It's usually really relatable. She's a poetry professor at Virginia Tech. She writes this: Allowables. I killed a spider, not a murderous brown recluse, nor even a black widow, and if the truth were told, this was only a small, sort of papery spider, who should have run when I picked up the book, but she didn't, and she scared me, and I smashed her. I don't think I'm allowed to kill something because I am frightened. The end is cut off there for you. So we have the origins of evil in this poem, the way that people, when frightened, can act with violence, can enact violence. And with that in mind, as our model, we'll look at some of the imagery that communicates that. So I'm picking up 2 images as I read the poem, and the first is the spider. The spider is delicate, tiny, timid, a small sort of papery spider. There is a fragility to that spider. So even though it's supposed to be a scary creature, this spider, in the speaker's eyes, we can see through the imagery it's not at all frightening. And then you have the other image of the eye, the speaker, picking up a book, a much heavier, larger thing than the spider, smashing her. There's the active verbs here. I smashed her. Immediately there's fear, and then short after is regret. So those things are connected. But the images that drive it for me are that, the tiny and then the oppressive, the big. So what you're going to do is similar. I'm asking you in your creative analysis assignment to think about imagery and to start drawing out the connotations of those images. But of course, you'll do it with the novel and not the poem. And to do it, we need a purpose. So it's not just, what does this reveal? I want you to think about setting. What does the image reveal about setting? So that we have a very specific task to seek imagery that lends us the beginning of an answer about where are we? What is this place? And so in the world of setting 2A, you are considering the time, place, and culture, but you're looking for imagery that points to how are those things established. It's not enough to simply say it's an island. The imagery will tell us, well, what kind of island? Just as the poetry that we saw showed us what kind of spider, not a scary one. Of course, the island is quite scary, but we'll talk about that a little bit here. I want to present briefly on the setting as I see it. This is my direct instruction piece. The time seems to be it's all sort of extra fictional. So it's not in the normal world. This is a sort of post-apocalyptic World War II type setting. In it, it seems that William Golding is imagining 1940s, it's the war, but in the war, there was an atomic bomb dropped on the home countries, which seemed to be England. And because of that, they're fleeing the country, especially children. So they've put all these boys on a plane. They all went to school together, so maybe it's a boarding school community or something like it, and they are evacuating them from the home countries. So the time, 1940s, the place literally is this plane crashing on a Pacific island as it tries to find its way to security. And then the culture is not quite so straightforward because there's lots of cultures going on. There's the culture of the home countries the boys bring with them. There is the culture of the island itself, the island as a kind of character. What culture does it have, irrespective of the boys? And then there's the culture the boys create on the island. So we have competing forces there that we'll begin to uncover this week. As you try to understand the island, I linked this map. I like this map. It's fan fiction. This is not from Golding, but it's useful because it's textually rich. Each of these little white dots connects you not only to what they imagine that space to be, but to pieces of the text that show it. So early on, as we land on the island with the boys, the first things we see are the beach. The beach is connected here into the book as fledged with palm trees. The ground is grassy, but everywhere there's this evidence of the plane coming through and the trees falling. And then there's this lagoon that's going to be important throughout the entire book, but it's one of the very first places that we're introduced to when Piggy and Ralph find each other on the beach, so like page 2. And then we get to the bathing area where the boys will take a bath. So these are the first spaces that they find. And then quickly they establish some shelters that they build. And they have a meeting area where Ralph blows his conch shell and they all gather. So those early spaces are what's driving your work now, and those other spaces we'll get to later in the book. All right, so feel free to click through this. I think it's really useful. So the cultures, I said, not exactly easy to pin down. Culture is a subjective thing. And what you'll do now in the creative analysis assignment is try to figure out, well, so what do I think it is? We're going to turn to imagery for that. When you're identifying images and you're trying to extract meaning from them, first find an image. What image do you see? As I was looking at the poem, I saw the spider. What words create the image? So dialing into the specific textual details that create that. For me, it was sort of papery spider. Okay, those are the words that are creating this delicate image for me. And then what emotions did the image convey? What do you feel as a result, or what are you meant to feel? What are the connotations, which is the meanings that come with those words? And how does that intersect with the message? So what do you think that Golding is trying to tell you about the images that he's putting on the page for you? Here's an example. Early on, they, the boys, accepted the pleasures of morning, the bright sun, the whelming sea, and sweet air, as a time when play was good and life so full that hope was not necessary and therefore forgotten. Man, I'm going to have to read this book with a highlighter. There's so many wonderful lines like this. So the connotations of the images here. Well, I've got the bright sun, the whelming sea, the sweet air. All three of those images are, in this case, bright, fresh, happy, light. There is a total aura here of peace and play and fun. Everything is wonderfully frivolous. When they write here at the end, hope was not necessary and therefore forgotten. There's a superficiality to it, but it is nonetheless a sweet place, a happy place. So I'm beginning to pull out my meanings. More formally, I'll do a couple more models. You will choose a scene from the book in this way. And then you'll address this question: how does the imagery reveal the setting and its connotations? I'm asking you to write out the text of the scene and use ellipses where necessary, so it's right there in front of all of us. and then analyze the scene below it. Please post it both in your BGD and on the discussion board. So you'll write out, as I do here, in quotes, this is the scene that I'm beginning to extract. And that will help you too to choose not so big a scene, really focus on a few lines and not much more, because that will help your analysis deepen rather than having to paint with a really broad stroke. So a couple of models. I'm reading this scene, and you see that I wrote at the top threat, because as I read it, that was the primary emotion that I thought I was meant to feel. And you can do that. You don't have to. It's just helpful for me as I read it to immediately identify, okay, what concept is coming through. So Ralph, jumped out from the terrace. The sand was thick. The heat hit him. He leapt back, pulled off his shirt. There's skull-like coconuts with green shadows in the forest sliding over his skin. Everything about this is kind of creepy and menacing to me. So I've highlighted the areas where I see that. You don't have to highlight. I'm just doing that for you visually as you watch this. I imagine as you're in your analysis, you'll explain, okay, so I see the sand is thick. The island is threatening, I write. The heat is aggressive. The food source looks deathly. The shadows even creep over Ralph in a menacing hold. Notice, too, how Ralph sheds the culture of the home countries when he forcefully undresses. So I write a little bit more, but I'm beginning to get this sense of how the island is a threatening place. And Ralph is completely oblivious to that and dives into the culture full force. Here's another example. In this example, I get peace. That's the first thing that I feel, and that's the thing I'll write about. This is a scene on the island where the setting has honey-colored sunlight, and the riotous colors die, and the heat and urgency cool. In this scene, the candle buds stirred, their green sepals drew back, the white tips rose delicately to meet the open air. Wow, everything about this to me is peaceful. The island here, as revealed by the images, it still moves, it's still alive, which is troubling, right? But here, there is a fragile beauty. Delicate, that word, I get that, fragility. Simon is not threatened. The sun is not oppressive, it's honey-colored. The darkness quiets the colors and the heat, and the gentle flowers drink in the cool of evening. And so everything about this, to me, and its connotations of the imagery, reveals the setting as a peaceful place. So that is your task. Early on, I'll do that tomorrow, early on in the book, go find a scene, explain to me what are the connotations of the images you see, and enjoy.